University of Houston Law Center, the NAACP Houston branch, the Houston Area Urban League, and the TSU Barbara John Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs. Thank you so much, guys. And, of course, Thurgood Marshall School of Law, of which the Earl Carl Institute is a part of. Just in terms of housekeeping, if you did not sign in, we ask that you please sign in on your way out. Please place your phones on silence, just as a courtesy. We have refreshments outside. You're welcome to get those and come back in throughout the program. There are restrooms just across the hall back here. And the format of the program will be brief, 5 to 10 minute discussions by each of our panelists. And at that point, we'll open it up for discussions from the audience. We really hope that this serves as an introduction to some of the issues that we've identified in a report that Jay Jenkins will talk about, that was primarily put together by the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. And so we'd like to hear from you all. What do you think the next steps, what do you think should be prioritized? If you did not get a one-page flyer outside that talks about criminal justice policy solutions, please pick up that flyer on your way out. Jay's going to discuss the report that it references in more details, but at the very top of that flyer, you will see the link to the entire report that we're here to introduce tonight. With that said, I want to briefly introduce our panelists. We have Jay Jenkins, who's a project attorney with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition here in Harris County. As a part of the coalition, Jay continues efforts to support the work of the local public defender's office, and he assists the coalition in promoting broader criminal justice reforms throughout the country. He has just such a high level of expertise, and I enjoy working with him in everything that we do. He's often an invited presenter at the programs put on by the Earl Carl Institute. We have Dr. James Douglas, who I pretty much feel like I don't need to make an introduction, but I will.
Right.
Dr. Douglas is the current president of the NAACP Houston chapter. He is a distinguished professor of law at Thurgood Marshall School of Law. He is a former dean of the law school, and he's also a former president of TSU. We are so proud to have him join us today. Next to Dr. Douglas, we have Alex Boonin, who is the Chief Public Defender for Harris County, and that's the office that he established in 2010. Previously, he was a federal public defender for the Northern District of New York. He is vice chair of the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association Public Defender Committee and a senior fellow of the American Leadership Forum. And again, he is someone who we have the privilege of working with quite often in terms of indigent defense reforms. And thank you, Alex, for the many times you brought us to the table. Next, we have Jennifer Herring. I had the privilege of working with Ms. Herring on the report that we're going to be discussing. She is currently the Director for Reentry Services with the Harris County Sheriff's Office at the jail. She received her bachelor's degree from Texas Southern University and a master's degree from the University of Houston. She is licensed in social work, and she was invited to become part of the TSU faculty as a visiting instructor, where she worked for 8 years. And finally, we have Sheriff Garcia. Sheriff Garcia has the distinction of heading the largest sheriff office in Texas. Often, when I worked with the jail, it was also referred to as the largest mental health facility in Texas. He has the third largest jail in the United States. In 2004, he was elected to Houston City Council and served as a member on several council committees, including as chair of Public Safety and Homeland Security. In 2007, he was appointed to serve as mayor pro tem by Mayor Bill White, and he is currently serving his second term as sheriff. So please, let's welcome all these people. And thank you again on behalf of the Earl Carl Institute for being here. I'm going to turn the program over to our moderator, Mr. Jay Jenkins.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you to everyone on the panel for coming. Thank you to everyone who came for braving the weather. It is very cold here in Texas. This is as cold as I've been since I moved down here about a year ago. So I appreciate y'all coming out. So a little bit about me and what I do in my organization. I work with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, and we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in Austin that primarily deals with the legislature. As Harris County has grown in size and influence, we've shifted resources here, which included adding me as a full-time staff member here in Harris County. And about the time that I got started last year in Harris County, right around when I got started, a group of what would eventually become the authors of the report and local stakeholders were pulled together in a meeting and came up with the idea of revisiting a more comprehensive approach to the Harris County criminal justice system. Dating back to 2008, when the jail conditions with about almost 11,000 inmates with an additional 1,500 being shipped out, that prompted a Department of Justice investigation, which quickly prompted action by the county. The county commissioned a report by the Justice Management Institute, and along with that formed the Harris County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. These were two giant steps in criminal justice policy reform. First, the JMI report gave a summation of everything that was not working with the system, and the Harris County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council brought everybody together to discuss those problems. Prior to the formation of the council, a forum for discussion between stakeholders and officials was not consistently held. So with the creation of the Coordinating Council came a lot of positive reform. And so the Coordinating Council was the first area that we looked at in the report. The function of the Coordinating Council, the successes that they've had, and ways going forward they can build on those successes to continue their jail reduction efforts. Since the Coordinating Council was founded in 2008, the jail population has decreased by almost 3,500 people. It's gone down a great deal, and that is in no small part due to the frequent collaboration and discussion that occurs at Coordinating Council meetings. They've recently completed their strategic planning initiative, and so going forward they have a clear directive, as I said, to build on the success that they've had in these first 5 or 6 years. The second area that our report touches on is the pretrial detainee population at the Harris County Jail. Despite the successes that have come in jail population reduction over the past 5 years, the number of pretrial detainees, inmates awaiting trial or awaiting disposition of their charges, has actually gone up. And many of these detainees are low-risk, nonviolent offenders that could continue to be productive citizens where they out pending the resolution of their charges. There are violent offenders and certain criminals that we do want to hold pre-trial, but the large number we're holding in Harris County is unnecessary and contributes a lot to the population numbers that you're seeing. The second area we discussed in the report is inmates that are either suffering from mental illness or dealing with substance abuse problems. Again, this is an area that the jail has to deal a lot with that I assume they would prefer not to have to do so much. They are spending a lot of resources on mental health care that were they afforded to citizens outside of the criminal justice system would be a lot cheaper and would allow these citizens to contribute to society in a positive manner. Additionally, low-risk, nonviolent drug offenders that may be dealing with substance abuse are also not necessarily great candidates to be taking up beds in the Harris County Jail. If we can get these folks the treatment that they need and monitor their progress to ensure that they're fulfilling their goals and resolving their substance abuse problems, then again, they can also be productive citizens. And then the final area we discuss in our report is the reentry barriers that former inmates face coming back into society. Even with a robust network of support, the obstacles and difficulties that face an ex-inmate are extreme. So with a lot of former inmates that have no network of support, they're being asked to leave jail with no resources and no assistance and instantly transition into a functioning member of society. With a little bit of investment in preparing these folks with the skills and resources and assistance that they would need to transition into society, you could see a very, very large return on your investment. The recidivism problem in the Harris County Jail, some numbers I saw put it as high as 80% of the inmates have been in jail before. So if we can do something to eliminate that problem, you can see a large reduction in jail population. And so we put this report together and released it at this time because we do think it's sort of a unique moment in Harris County history. Houston is becoming a major premier city in the United States, and for the first time, in their history since 2008, they have the coordinating council, they have the tools, and they have the advocates that are working to reform the criminal justice system to ensure that fairness and justice are delivered to all of the citizens in Harris County. We'll hear from someone from the district attorney's office. We'll hear from people from all political spectrums that are committed to making these changes and advocating for smart, efficient reforms that allow for the county to maintain public safety, but allow for its citizens to also operate on a more productive level. So with that, I will go ahead and cede the floor to our speakers. We're going to have Sheriff Garcia go ahead on first, and the floor is yours, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Jay, and thank you all for being here. And Jay's already kind of laid out a little bit of what were the circumstances in 2008 and 9 as it relates to the Harris County Jail. We were overcrowded. We were shipping people to the state of Louisiana, along with our tax money. A significant one thing that wasn't mentioned was that at that time a significant number of the people in my custody were deemed high risk offenders by our classification model, and we had very little opportunity, and rather the standard calculation for time served in the county jail was, and had been for many years, 2 for 1, 2 days credit for time served, and so we had a lot of challenges. We were using roughly about 1,600 variance beds. These are the plastic temporary beds that are movable that we were laying out in the cells. They were about 6 inches off the floor, often referred to as low riders or bunk beds, and so those were some of the conditions. He's laid out how a third of my population consistently, whether it was when I was overcrowded or today, consistently a third of my population are mentally ill. They're on some form of psychotropic medication, and we also get some of the most medically ill folks in our facility. And so these are some of the challenges that I contend with, coupled with the fact that as the sheriff, I am the purveyor of the people sent to me, meaning I have no say in how they come to me. I just get them. And so working through the things that were within my scope to address is that one of the first steps that we took is that we looked at our classification model to make sure it was the best instrument that we ought to be using. Once we modified our classification instrument, lo and behold, out of the same people sitting in my jail, all of a sudden I think we found a third more that qualified to be medium or low risk individuals, which qualifies them for more education and work opportunities within our jail system. The next thing that we did is that we looked to see how can we, some folks, because we're so overcrowded, were saying, well, just do a mass release. Just let people out. You can do that. And I could have. But would that have been a service to them? And would that have been a service to public safety? And I contend that it would not be a win-win for anyone involved. But rather, we looked at the possibility of going from 2 for 1, that in certain areas going to 3 for 1. And so what we did is that working with our medium and low risk offenders, we began to incentivize education and vocational training. HCC is our partner in that regard, and so leveraging our 3 for 1 credit, what we refer to as our earned early release program, is that we start to get folks into our GED classes, into our vocational classes, into our work programs, and that allowed folks to earn credit faster for time served and more credit, and allowed for a quicker release of our out of our facility. And then I looked at some of the county jails around the country and recognized the fact that in my previous world as a director of the city's anti-gang office, I had and continue to have a strong relationship with the University of Houston School of Social Work. And I've always respected the abilities of social workers. But at the time that I came in, I found that we were social worker poor in the county jail. And so we worked to build our relationships in that regard, started bringing in more interns, and ultimately getting to a point where Ms. Herring, who is the director of my social reentry programs, basically social service unit, if you will, within the county jail, Kathy Griffin here was one of our first attempts at looking at how we work with the tender populations that we have in a productive way so that we could try to mainstream them as quickly as possible, working with them while we have them in custody so that they would have greater success in the community and not find that revolving door that we would often talk about that would bring them back to the county jail. And so I often get the question, how did you get from 11,400 in 2009 to an average of 8,500 in recent years? It wasn't easy, is the first answer. And the second answer is that you just have to be creative at looking at the various opportunities and looking at evidence-based practices that support reintegration, support good public safety. And I think one of the fundamental aspects that I've looked at, that in spite of handcuffs and jail cells, I think number one, social service programs do an incredible amount of good, and secondly, that these types of programs have to be factored into what we consider public safety. And ultimately, I venture to say that if you want someone who has committed a crime not to commit it again, you either do one or two things. One, you either never let them out of jail, or number two, you work to re-engineer them to the extent that you can. And I think that our reentry programs work very aggressively in the re-engineering side and help with self-esteem and all of those other factors. Another key area was that I couldn't understand how we would get folks who Monday through Friday were not bad people, but on Friday they'd have to turn themselves in, and then I'd have to keep them in jail for the weekend, hence the name Weekenders. And I think at the end of the day, the judges and I want the same thing. We want justice for the community, and we want justice for the individuals that were coming to us in that regard. So we just said, let's put them to work. Instead of sitting in a cell, let's put them to work. And so we built the Weekender program, Weekender work program. And so now folks are working on Saturdays and Sundays as a condition of their sentence by our good judges. And this, I think folks don't mind that. People want to make good use of their time. They make a contribution to the community, and we're tracking it, and so we'll see if they come back to us or not. And but at the end of the day, it has been our effort to and I think that these programs have sustained. But I think that these programs ultimately play into the goal that we want a safer community. We want a cost-effective criminal justice system. And when you have an overcrowded jail, you're spending a lot of money on food. You're spending a lot of money. One of the things I was spending a lot of money on was overtime. I was consuming $40 million in overtime when I took over the operation. Today, in fact, in the budget that I just closed out, we used just a little over $5 million. And that means that we're staffing properly, but it also meant that when you have a smaller population or a population within your respective occupancy design, that you don't have to have more folks working the floors and all that, because we do have to comply with certain state standards. But I'll close with this, that Kathy's program and the work of Ms. Herring, I track the success of those programs very carefully. Because towards Jay's last comments, it is, I think one important threshold that we have to cross is this. Any of you ever raised a child? Okay, so have I. And she's made a mistake or two, and I've had to get on her. Even had to put the belt to her once or twice that she reminds me of. But imagine if I never stopped spanking her, if I never stopped yelling at her. Former inmates effectively remain inmates because we have developed a attitude towards them, for some of them rightly. But one of the most important thresholds that we have to get to as a community is the fact that if we want people not to do things illegally, then we have to figure out a way how we're going to allow them to do things legally. Otherwise, we ought to not let them out of jail to begin with, because they're going to come back. And so it is one of the reasons why, amongst all these reentry programs that we do, one of the fundamental things that we do is job fairs and job placement and building partnerships with corporate America so that people can earn a living once they leave the jail. And but it's not for everybody, and so some of these jobs could take people to different places outside of their community. So it's one of the greatest challenges that we have is the reintegration, the effective and full-fledged reintegration of folks back into the community. If we say you made your mistake, the criminal justice said you have done your time, you're free to go, you are now allowed to go back out there, and that's also compounded by the fact that some folks lose their Medicaid when they're in my custody for 30 days plus, and and so we got a lot of challenges that I think are room for opportunities. Almost none of that is my purview, but I think collectively as a community we have to talk about it, we have to work through it, we have to encourage local businesses and business owners and corporate America to think differently about ex-offenders, the right ex-offenders. But if there's not someone like Kathy who gives me inspiration and motivation to believe that we're on the right track, I don't know what can. And so I strongly thank, number one, the coordinating council. Clarissa and Judge Cosper head that organization, and that's been an incredible and very significant evolution to the attitude of this county. One of the most conservative counties in the state of Texas. Sent a lot of people to death row, sent a lot of people to the state prison system. That body, the coordinated criminal justice system, or council, forces us as a system to sit at the same table. Prior to that, if I wanted to do something, then I would do what I could to the extent that I could. If I needed the collaboration of the DA or judge or the county attorney, or we didn't have a public defender then, or the probation department, then I'd have to go talk to them on an individual level and hope that if I got them to agree, that they would stay agreeing by the time I got to my office. So the council forces us to be at a table to talk to things and make agreements as a system and measure the thing that we all want to get to. And I think that's enhanced public safety, a safer community, and a cost-effective criminal justice system, not one that overburdens the taxpayers and depletes other necessary community services by having to build more jails. And one more thing is that, we built capacity in the county jail just because we're a growing community. But now in fact, all those low temporary beds that I talked about, we no longer have them.
Right.
I have been able to give them all back to the state. And what we did do, though, is that just by the sheer logic of the fact that our community has grown, and regretfully sometimes that means that folks come to our jail, is that we made those temporary beds permanent beds within our existing infrastructure, which we believe saves an incredible amount of money to the taxpayers by not having to force us into the conversations of jail construction. And so all of these things we have work to do, not for anything other than I've listened to the concerns of the community. I've worked with my partners at the table, and we've just tried to find things that make sense. Building a crisis intervention response team so that sick people aren't arrested because they're sick, but rather put into the necessary services that they need to be in, and just being practical about the human beings in spite of their mistakes. Human beings are in our custody, and we have to think about it, I believe, in that manner. So, Jay, thank you for your work.
I appreciate it, Sheriff. Thank you. Next, a lot of the stuff we discuss with the criminal justice system, a lot of times the weight of criminal justice system falls disproportionately upon the minority community. So we've invited Dr. Douglas this evening to speak on some of those issues. So Dr. Douglas?
Good evening.
I guess I've been married most of my life, in fact, all of my life. I once said I marched to a different tune, and the response I got was, you don't even hear the tune. Is that better? Oh, okay. That you don't even hear a tune. When I took over the NAACP, one of the things I have been trying to do is to get them to understand how social policy actually changed. And to get them to understand filing lawsuits and lawyers don't change social policy. It is social activism that change social policy, because you have to change the mindset of public. You have to change public opinion before you can change the law. And so the theory is social activists change public opinion. And once that public opinion is changed, then lawyers can come in and describe in legal terms what that new social policy is. So in order to change social policy, we have to change thought process. Second, NAACP is a civil rights organization. When I took over NAACP, all the branches, national, there are 26 committees. There is no social movement with 26 different goals. If you look at successful social movements, they generally have one goal, two at the most. So I said to them, we're going to have two goals. well, we're going to have one goal but two moving parts. The sheriff would tell you, any other law enforcement official would tell you, the majority of the people, substantial portion of the people incarcerated are undereducated. Now, my belief is, if you take care of problems upstream, you eliminate a lot of the downstream problems. So mine is, if this large group of people are undereducated, then why don't we deal with making sure that we increase the possibility of educating a larger portion of the population? So I said, we're going to work on HSD and the other public school districts. One of the things we're doing, and it's kind of holistic, I've been talking to city council people. I've been talking about prospective people who want to get involved in city government, trying to convince them that it's stupid to say, well, HSD is another entity. We have nothing to do with it. Well, if you don't have an educated citizenry, then that's going to affect your ability to be a successful urban area. We're talking to people at the partnership, because if you don't have an educated citizenry, then you can't have successful economic development. So one is, and I won't go into what the solution is in education. It's really, really simple. It is so simple, most people don't even believe it works, but it works. But one is to deal with that upstream problem called lack of education. The other one, on the criminal justice side, I sit on a grand jury. I see a lot of the problems that we could easily eliminate if we took a proper issue to drugs and decriminalize a lot of the drugs we have. We will greatly decrease the population of people who are incarcerated. Now, people say, well, we have to see what's going on in Oregon, and we have to see what's going on in Washington. What most people don't know, and it was funny when I saw the article a few weeks ago that said they decriminalized marijuana in Alaska. Well, marijuana has been decriminalized in Alaska for decades. There were some restrictions. If you were smoking in your house, you could smoke in your house all day. There was nothing illegal about it. So decriminalization of marijuana has been around for years. Alaska didn't blow up. It didn't fall into the sea. It didn't become a part of Russia. So we have to understand, we have to be smart about how we do things. Chief, Sheriff, it's really funny. Some decades ago, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a judge in New York City, in Manhattan. Name was Bruce Wright. They called him Turn 'em Loose Bruce. Right. All right. See, most people don't understand, what is the purpose of bail? The purpose of bail is to guarantee that the individual is more likely to show for trial.
Yep.
That's all. Because most people think, well, it depends on how serious the crime is. No. It depends on whether you think this person is likely to show for trial. When I lived in Ohio, I was hired along with a group that I worked for, and it was to look at all of the factors that the judges in Cuyahoga County were using to determine whether or not people ought to be released on their own recognizance. That is, the judge believes you're such an upright citizen, we don't even have to charge you bail. If you tell us you're going to show up, we believe you're going to show up. So judges use a lot of different factors.
Whether you're married, they believe married people are more likely to show than single people. Whether you've had a job, they believe people who work are more likely to show than people who are out of work. Whether you own a home, whether you've lived in the area for a long period of time, a lot of them. So they asked us, take a look at all these factors and see which one of them really have some significant impact on whether a person is likely to show for trial. And we did. We ran the data. There was only one. Aliases. People use people who use aliases, people who want to come up with all these names, you can't trust them. But all the other people you can trust. So it doesn't matter whether a person is married or whether a person is single or whether a person has a job or doesn't have a job or own a house or live in an apartment. You have to look at their character. So all of those factors just basically are blown. So we could easily, I'm not saying turn everybody loose, but the judges need to come up with some different factors because it's been proven that the factors they use have no relevance at all. So we could empty out, when you're talking about pretrial diversion, we could easily use pretrial diversion. Often we believe, however, that once a person is indicted for a trial, they ought to be punished. All right, they ought to be punished even before the trial. And so you ought to set a high bail and make them pay before they go to trial. And so that's one of the reasons I think judges set high bail. They say, oh, God, that's a heinous crime, and so we ought to set a real high bail. They're not really concerned about whether the person is likely to show or not. So I'll close by saying we're dealing with those two upstream problems. One is eliminate the number of people who actually go into the incarceration system, and the other is by making some change in these drastic, crazy, donkey kind of drug laws we have. And the second one is to make sure we educate all our kids. I'll close it with this, and I'm meeting with some of the people from YES next week. But it's really funny because I asked the superintendent of schools, I said, have you ever talked to the people from the successful charter schools or even the successful schools in your district to ask them, what is it that you do? And he said, no. I said, well, I have. All right, and I can tell you they are all doing the same thing. And what is that same thing? Getting a student to take a book home and read it.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. We appreciate it. So we'll go from, I think Sheriff Garcia has a previous engagement, so we're going to let him.
Please excuse me, but you got some capable folks in the room that'll be able to answer a lot of questions for me, including Clarissa. So, Clarissa, why don't you come sit here, because you're going to have access to data.
Clarissa,
This is her husband sitting next to her, and I just thank them for all the work she does. She works hard, so thank you very much. So come on, Sheriff Clarissa, come on.
Clarissa. Yeah.
She'll be dangerous then.
Thank you, Sheriff. Now, Clarissa, you have to make sure to tell Judge Cosper that we let you sit up here this afternoon, okay?
I'll let you do that.
So going off something that Dr. Douglas mentioned about the bail, I'm going to go to Alex next because Alex is the Chief Public Defender. In addition to the Coordinating Council being a good forum to get everyone together, the establishment of the Public Defender's Office in 2010 actually gave defense attorneys and defendants' rights a voice in those discussions. And so Alex has a specific program that he's considering a pilot program for the bail reform. So I'm going to go ahead and let him go ahead and describe that for us.
Okay, so the decision whether someone gets released pending trial is one of the most important decisions in a criminal case. People who do not get released while their case is pending are more likely to be convicted. They're more likely to get a jail sentence or a prison sentence. They're less likely to get some kind of community supervision or pretrial diversion. It's a major, major decision in a criminal case. In Harris County, persons who are arrested go before a 24-hour magistrate judge who sets that bond. There's a prosecutor there. There's not a defense lawyer. The defendants then are set bond. Now, they'll get to the court of jurisdiction fairly quickly. Might even be the next day. But their bond has already been set. And even if they can make bond later, they've spent the night in jail. And there are many consequences to that. You might lose your job. You might miss school. You might be unable to take care of your kids. So that's a very important thing. And as Jay said, we have a huge pretrial population in Harris County. About 60% of our jail are people waiting for that. So what I've suggested, and I brought this issue up with the judges since I've been running the public defender's office about 4 years now. I've been raising it several times, that I think there should be advocacy at that hearing. The defense present should be there and be able to advocate for release on behalf of those defendants. So I've suggested that. I'm putting together a proposal. I met with my board today and explained to them why I thought it was important. I'm going to meet with the two presiding judges on Monday to talk to it more again with them. I'm going to talk to the coordinating council next week. But I think it's not just good policy, but I think it's probably the law. And I think we in Harris County should probably get ahead of that and not be told we have to do this. I think it's just a good idea, and it's just something I'm going to keep pushing because I think it's a good idea.
I do too.
Thanks, Alex.
Great idea.
And he makes the point that, again, not only is it good policy, but getting in front of these issues is not something that Harris County has historically been very good at. And the opportunity here for a common sense program that will, ensure a more fair disposition is something that we also, and if you read the report, you can see we have a large section supporting Alex's proposal. So now we're going to have Jennifer Herring from the Sheriff's Office talk a little bit more about her specific role in the reentry programs of the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. At the Sheriff's Department, we have now a large reentry department, and we are the feet on the ground. That's who we are. And Kathy's shaking her head because she is one of our soldiers who actually goes out and helps these inmates. Part of my wonderful experience here being at Texas Southern was that I love doing research, and education is powerful, Dr. Douglas. And what we found in our research is that rehabilitation does work. It does. And that's traditionally what we haven't done in jails, what we haven't done for incarcerated people. We've had a throw them in jail, throw away the key, lock them up, don't pay any attention to them. They're not people, put them on an island, they're lepers. Really. And that's how they feel. And what we know is that does not keep them from coming back to jail. It doesn't. We found that it teaches them a little bit more about their crime. Yeah, they're in with people who know more, have done more. So if there's a way that we could stop that process, which begins in thought, not in action, then maybe we can make a difference from not us stopping them from coming back to jail, but for them not wanting to come back. That's where the power is, getting them to change their mind. So we're trying to shift the paradigm And I think that is really, really critical. The research does say that reentry begins when they enter back into the community. We disagree. We believe that reentry begins when they hit the jail. As soon as they put their feet at booking, we would like to meet them and say, how can we help you? And the foundation of everything we do is very simple. It is evidence-based, and all that we do is evidence-based, but it's a word we talk about all the time, we don't use a lot, and it's love. Yeah, it's love, very simple. That's what we do. We meet people, we speak to them, and we do that through creative programs. And Catherine Griffin is here, and if you don't know her, you should. If you have not met her, you will. She'll probably be around. Kathy heads up our We've Been There, Done That program, and that is our human sex trafficking, prostitution reform. Kathy's program is our largest program. It's been in the jail the longest. And Kathy right now has men and women that she sees in helping them transform their lives. Kathy is not only a program coordinator, but she's also a peer mentor and a recovery coach, which we know works also. The research says that they do better with people who have been there and done that. So we're looking for people on our staff who've actually experienced what these inmates have experienced and can come give a real-world testament to help them get through their own process, their own journey. Another one of our programs, and we designed our programs to meet the needs of the most vulnerable in jail. Our victims. We have a program for pregnant women, and right now that program is just made it over a year in existence. In over a year, we've seen approximately 170 women. We've had 3 to return to jail. And the reason we know that is because we know them by name. We know them by name. We are now establishing a system where we can track them and collect data, analyze and measure the things that we love to do as educators. But right now, this is grassroots, in the trenches, communicate with each other, allow the community to come in. We have 4 reentry programs. We've been there, done that. Mentoring Moms, which is our pregnant women's program. The Freedom Project, which is our program for victims, for actually substance abusers. And then our last program, you may have seen it the other day on Isaiah Carey's Factor, our Stars and Stripes program for our veterans. And what these programs do is link these clients to their resources that the community has. Maybe they didn't know they had these resources. Maybe they weren't in existence when they were incarcerated. Maybe they have no idea that they have a problem. 100% of the vets that we've met in our program are suffering from PTSD, underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, not diagnosed at all. So we've had a challenging job trying to get them stabilized. Our staff work around the clock to case manage. I am a social worker, so we want to make sure that everybody has a case, everybody is getting linked to resources. We do that through the effortless work of our volunteers. We have resourced the community to find housing services, to find substance abuse treatment, to find safe housing, to find financial support. We have Compass, BBVA Compass, who comes in every Friday and teaches our clients about financial matters. Even if you're a prostitute, you can balance your money. You can. And they didn't know that. So now they have ownership over their lives. Ownership. It's a holistic experience for them. They meet people who normally they wouldn't meet had they been out on the streets. Goodwill Fexo has a grant that offers workforce development and job training. They're there every Wednesday speaking with these clients on how to get prepared for a job. And what they've promised us that they would do is that they would keep in touch, because we know that that back door when they get discharged is a very critical place where they could either make or break. And we've seen it. We've discharged prostitutes to pimps waiting at the back door. Yeah, they're drug pushers at the back door. Their boyfriend who abused them before they came in jail were at the back door. And then Kathy was there. Someone who had been working with them over the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days that they've been in jail. And they've developed a rapport with her. They trust her. She's a mentor now. Yeah. And she's given them something that a lot of inmates don't have. I was in a meeting the other day and I heard someone say, people are in jail because they're poor. After I finished cringing, I said, no, people are in jail because they broke the law. Why do people break the law? What we've seen in our experience is they break the law because they're in pain. They're in pain. That's what they all have in common. All the thousands of women that we've met since 2009 who are victims of prostitution and human sex trafficking, who've been traumatized, are all in pain. They're all substance abusers as well. So what we do is try to ameliorate some of that pain by giving them hope. So we brought a revolution, I believe, to the criminal justice system. Let's give them some hope.
Thanks, Jennifer. And of note, on the reentry side in our report, a lot of the programs that the Sheriff's Office is developing, they're doing on a threadbare budget. And it's one of those issues, again, where...
Budget. What budget?
And, it's another one of those issues where it costs the county a lot of money on the back end, and with more investment on the front end, they could save a whole lot on the back end. So that's another issue to keep in mind. Before we go to the question and answer session, I wanted to bring up someone from the Harris County District Attorney's Office. We, in the report, did our best to describe all the programs we could find with respects to diversion, pretrial programs, and one of the more creative ones we've seen, or one of the newer ones we've seen, is with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, is their First Chance program for first-time marijuana offenders. And I wanted to bring up Nicole Clark from the District Attorney's Office to talk a little bit about how that program is going. So give her a round of applause.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Again, my name is Nicole Clark, and I'm a representative here from the Harris County DA's office. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the First Chance Intervention Program that's currently being offered through the Harris County DA's office. And basically, it's a diversionary program that's aimed at deterring first-time offenders who would otherwise be convicted or arrested for a possession of marijuana charge. It's aimed at deterring them from the criminal justice system, preventing them from having any kind of conviction on their record, which would impact them later on in life or whenever that disposition is made on a case, possibly. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how the program works. Basically, it's a pilot program now, and so what happens is an officer is out, makes an encounter with a person, finds that they are in possession of marijuana under 2 ounces, it has to be a Class B offense. They run their background to make sure that they don't have any other priors, no other holds, haven't been any kind of adult trouble within the criminal justice system. And then what they do is they give them a referral to pretrial services for an intake. Those are all the individuals that are eligible for the program that goes for that intake process. There, they basically ask a series of questions to determine whether or not they are at risk of low-risk offenders or high-risk offenders. The low-risk offenders are placed on a 60-day track. And basically what happens is they pay a $100 fee, and then they have to do 8 hours of community service. The high-risk or moderate-risk offenders are placed on a 90-day track where they have to do a 8-hour cognitive skills class, and they also have to pay a $100 fine. And at the end of that, at the completion of that 60 or 90-day period, their cases are dismissed. The district attorney's office has stood behind the position that immediately after those cases are disposed of, they are eligible for expunction so that record, they won't have a record at all, and it won't impact them in any way. So far we've had several lots of success with the program. It started October 6th, 2014. Currently, we have 1,014 people who have come through the program. 548 of those participants have successfully completed the program, and just about 7% or so have been terminated for the program for reoffending in some way or another, maybe another misdemeanor offense or a higher level felony offense. But for the most part, we are seeing great success with the program. It's a very short program aimed at self-correcting. There's not a whole lot of involvement with the criminal justice system, and that's intentional to give them the opportunity to kind of have a wake-up call, do what they need to do to correct that behavior, complete the conditions of the program, and have that case resolved without any further involvement with the district attorney's office or any other criminal justice agency.
That's good.
Thank you, Nicole. And again, the district attorney's office is to be commended. There is a lot of policy disagreements that go on, but the district attorney's office continues to be open to innovation and new programs to see what they can do to divert people away from the criminal justice system. So at this time, we are going to open it up. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to help me out on questions if anyone has any questions, but we'll open it up for questions if anyone has any. Okay.
What do we as community members and advocates do to push a new policy regarding drug abuse? Especially we're talking about the low level of it. The DA's office is doing a great job, and there are many people. And just recently I was in court with someone where the judge was reviewing their past record. They had two drug arrests, dismissed, no conviction, or no expungement, and the judge said it has sentencing. So what should we be doing? How can we organize to really look at these drug charges so that disenfranchising people, it's leaving them in poverty, you can't get jobs, you can't get housing? I just like to give a little accountable. What do you think we can do to push hard for those kinds of things?
Well, you remember earlier I was talking about social activism.
Yeah.
We are going to have to actually develop a coalition because one of the crazy things about social activism is demonstration, protest does draw attention. So we're going to have to build a coalition and draw attention to the fact. See, if you look at what has happened in our criminal justice, in our prison population, our jail population in the last 25 years, and it's all, well, 25 to 30 years, it's all come about because of change in drug policy. If you look at the great increase in the incarceration population, a lot of it has to do with what's happening in drugs. What we have to do is get the public to understand the cost. See, most people don't realize the cost of incarcerating people. I often say we invented our law enforcement system to protect us from each other. But we are now spending a tremendous portion of our law enforcement revenue to protect us from ourselves. We're not protecting, the guy walking down the street smoking a joint, not hurting me, not hurting anybody else. In fact, when I was in undergrad school, we used to joke. I had a partner, and we used to joke when we go to parties. We like people who smoke, guys who smoked, because they all came to the party and went to sleep. so there was very little competition. so it's not as if. And then if you look back, if you go back and read the news reports in the 80s about what was going to happen if we didn't put all these people in prison forever who smoked crack.
Right.
Now, you don't even hear anything about crack, but I can tell you from being on a grand jury, I see a lot of crack people coming through. But you don't hear that kind, because what happens, you can go back and read and study about drugs in America. For some unknown reason, law enforcement was able to convince the public that our safety was at stake if we didn't lock up all these people who smoked a joint or who smoked a crack. They convinced the public. We have to go back with that same fervor and let the public know that it's untrue and how much it is costing us in our tax dollars that we can be doing some other things with. You don't see people in Colorado, you don't see crime rampant in Colorado. And as I said earlier, marijuana has been legal in Alaska for I don't know how long. So one is to get the information. I once talked to the assistant director for the Center for Disease Control at a conference, and we were talking about the fact that the drug issue was really a medical issue and not a law enforcement issue. And so I asked him, if you all know this, why are we locking up all the people? And he said, for some strange reason, law enforcement has a better, they can get to the ear of the legislature and Congress than we can. We can tell them what the facts are, but they don't believe us. Unfortunately, most law enforcement people are not like Sheriff Garcia. They believe, they understand. They're like the people who control, the prison complex, who know that it's money. Most police forces and most policemen know that their job depends on the more people they lock up. The more people they lock up, the more they can convince the public that they need to be paid top dollars. If you look at the police contracts, there is no other profession in the world that has the kind of guarantees that are in the police contract. And they have that because they've been able to convince us that they are so utterly necessary for us to exist.
And going to what Dr. Douglas was saying, those numbers, and partially again due to the formation of the coordinating council, those numbers are now available. We're seeing, you can point to those numbers of drug arrests, and you can point to the cost that it has to the county to incarcerate these people. They're all in the report, and it is massive. So, and for those that maybe don't agree ideologically with Dr. Douglas, you can present them with a bottom line calculation that this is costing taxpayers this much money. So I think that's a good point. Okay, we have a question over here.
Yeah, I like the question and the statement. My name is Reginald Gordon. I have a program here in the city of Houston called Operation Outreach OG1. For the last 30 years, I started the first Scared Straight program in Texas prison back in 1979. I started that program in Texas prison and spread it out all over Texas prison. I've dealt with thousands of young men in Texas Juvenile Detention Center. For the last 30 years, after doing 20 years in prison myself, being certified as a 16-year-old, doing 20 years on a 50-year sentence, getting out. I've been out 20 years this year. I've established myself in the Harris County Juvenile Detention Center by working with all the Harris County juvenile gang members in this city. And I say that from the front line. Nobody in the city have been on the front line to work with the gang members from when Adrian Garcia was a juvenile probation officer all the way to the top soldiers that's at the juvenile probation department that know OG1. I say that to say this here about repairing old men instead of building strong children. I have a problem because for the last 20 years in working with the juvenile probation department in the city, it's nobody can get into a room. I don't care what school you put me in, what juvenile department you put me in, what classified area of mental illness your child is dealing with. OG1 can't bring him to understand and listen to me for 2 to 3 hours. What I have a problem with is the community support that I am lacking to work with our children. Especially as a young black man that's have a kid I'm working with as an example as a black man that spent 20 years in prison and been out 20 years. I am a walking example. But right now, I'm dealing with, at BBRC, which is the Barnett Bailey Youth Center, I have 144 young people under the age of 10 to 17 years old. The city of Houston have declared that population of young people redeemable, can't be worked with, can't be fixed. Keep them in there until they age out. Because the staff can't work with them, the court system can't deal with them, so they asked me to come in to work with them. But the thing is that they always want me as a young black man to work with our children for free. Even though you have the skills, come in and work with them. But I say, just like he said, that the only way we're going to change it, because as I went in the institution back in the 70s, 80% of the brothers that I deal with had the same problem I had. Not reading. Not able to read. Just like he said, 80% of the brothers that's in the county jail now are real offenders. Because the issue you're dealing with, especially young black men that fills up the jails in the prison population, we have a problem called ego tripping. And I'm going to tell you something. The Harris County Jail, the prison system, is the biggest system that turns out young men to become homosexuals. Because you got a system that don't pay inmates how to survive other than using other inmates to take advantage of the weak and the vulnerable.
Thank you. Sir, you got a question?
The question is, where is the money for the grassroots brothers that's going in there working with these people on the ground?
The funding question is a good one, and that's something to keep in mind and when you're talking to your local legislators. Whoever you can and however you can get in touch with them. I know the county is looking for opportunities for outreach, and so getting in touch with your legislators is probably your best way there. Any other questions?
Yeah, let me see if I can respond to this, and it's probably not what you want to hear, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Because people always ask me, I probably spend more time within the NAACP than I do with my job. And I don't get paid anything. When I ask people to volunteer, they say, what's in it for me? And I said, the pleasure of knowing you're doing something.
Absolutely.
If you're talking about changing public policy, nobody pays for you to change public policy. It's just something that's innate in you, and that's where your payment is going to come from. Now, what you try to do, which is what I'm charged with doing now, there's always strength in numbers. So I understand that one of my goals, and I say to members of my organization, we can't frighten anybody with small numbers. In a democratic environment that we're in, if you want to frighten people, you got to have massive numbers. So one of the things you're going to have to do is increase the number of volunteers you have.
Absolutely.
And I know it's hard work, but it's the way to get it done. The second one is, and I know this is real hard for people who are passionate, and I'm a very, very passionate person. When I heard you speak, and Mrs. Provost knows it, a guy named Al Chambliss, and I'm going to use this as an example. Al pulled me into a lawsuit that he worked on for 30 years over in Mississippi, and when I started going over the federal court in Mississippi helping Al, we were on the way back one day, and he said, I can't understand it. He said, all the things that you're asking for, people are listening to me. I've been saying the same thing for years. Why are they listening to you when they wouldn't listen to me? And I said, Al, I'm going to use this as an example. I say, we both cut meat. We're both meat cutters. However, you're a butcher and I'm a surgeon. And so there's a way you have to approach people, even if they're your enemy. You have to learn how to get your enemy to become your friend. And so it's the way you talk to them, the way you treat them, the way you express yourself that's real. You have to be passionate but calm.
Absolutely.
And the way you go about things.
Yes. It's my turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I noticed on the marquee it says Houston, we have a problem. And I don't see a question mark behind it. It's a statement. Now, I was talking to a lady earlier, senior citizen, and she said that when her husband and son leaves in the morning to go to work, she prays to God that they'll return, that they can return safely. She said she's not worried about so much about Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or them catching Ebola. She's more concerned about them being unlawfully shot by a HPD officer who, when they feel like they can invoke plausible denial, take advantage of a situation from a historical perspective and kill her son or her husband. Now, according to the Kerner report and the Christopher report, the reason for the rebellions in Watts and around this country basically was because of the culture and the behavior of the police department, the culture, the status quo. Some of the people in jail obviously broke the law, and they're there because, well, they broke the law and the officer did the right thing. But many of them, especially black people, are incarcerated because of racist status quo practices that permeates the entire nation in the police departments that we don't want to talk about. Now, if we wouldn't have to worry about making bond, having special beds in jail. We wouldn't have to worry about all of this we would have less of a worry if we didn't, according to your information here, and if I may, just, although Houston police statistics show that white drivers are more likely than black drivers to carry contraband, 47% of the blacks are arrested in relation to 14.8% of the whites. What do we attribute that to? Not a lack of education. Bobby Tolan wasn't shot in his yard with his mother pleading with the police, telling them that this is her car, this is my son, etc. He wasn't shot because of a lack of education. When a policeman pull over a black person, it's not a lack of education. He's not pulling him over because he doesn't have, of a lack of education, etc. He's pulling him over because he's black. And this is what we have to deal with before, in other words, cause and effect. The effect is going to jail, in talking about overcrowding and bail and all. That's the effect. The cause is the police status quo that they are adhering to that is racist. It's a racist environment, and that's what we're dealing with.
Since he mentioned education, which is what I talked about, just sit down and think. What would happen if most of those African Americans, uneducated and incarcerated now, were out, being productive citizens, all right, earning very good wages, paying very good taxes, and most importantly, voting? We could control who the mayor is, we can control who the city council is, we can control a lot of who's in Austin making the laws. So we have the ability, by educating the majority of the African Americans and other minorities, we have the ability to control the people who make decisions for us. Right now, because we've been removed from that decision-making process, other people are making decisions for us. That's why education is so important.
And we'll go over here, just try to keep it quick so we can get through everyone's questions.
Okay, yeah. My name is Charlie Jones, and picking off of what he was saying in regards to the Robbie Tolan case, y'all, we keep missing the boat about something. I mean, we still are innocent until proven guilty, and when he brought up the question in regards to the police, when you start talking Robbie Tolan, you start talking Jordan Baker, y'all, we missing it. Mr. Bunnis, we was in your office just the other day. It's only certain things that you can do as the public defender. There's a lot of other things that need to be done. You can't even go in all the courts. Am I correct? Okay, so we got things that we need to talk about that we've been on the battlefield trying to talk about, and it's not happening. So we can keep talking about education and all that, but that is some things that we can do with the people that's already in office. In the Tolan case, that case had to go to the U.S. Supreme Court because of a summary judgment that was denied right here. You don't need all that education stuff in order to fight. Ms. Tolan went on and fought even when her lawyers didn't go along with what she was doing. She continuously to fight, but where is she? She's not at the table. I'm not saying just at this table, I'm talking about period. We went to Austin. When we there, Douglas, we was in Austin just this past weekend. We've been to D.C. The room is not filled, and it's got to have something to do with what we're doing. So when we start talking about education, fine, we know we have to have education. But we can fight just like we're doing right now. The Tolan case comes up in September. Okay, where are the people locally? Ms. Tolan really couldn't even find a lawyer here locally to help represent her, and she still needed local counsel. Even when she went to go get her lawyer that she got, she still needed local counsel from here. Nobody stepped up.
Let's see if you all can understand what I'm trying to say. We can deal with individual single problems, but there's a systemic problem that affects more than one person. I'm more about correcting the system than dealing with one individual problem. When I talk about education, remember I said, if you take care of small upstream problems, you eliminate large downstream problems. See, you all want to deal with individual downstream problems, and I'm dealing with upstream problems that prevent the downstream problems.
So what's the difference between he and Ferguson? Meaning that the fact that the article came in the paper, it spoke about Ferguson, meaning that after his death, then the U.S. Justice Department got involved. Why didn't the Justice Department here? Somewhere along we have to start that process. Am I correct?
Let me explain. You want to know what's happening in Ferguson? No, listen.
I want to know is this here. How do we get the Justice Department here? What does it take here? We can all talk about somewhere else.
All right. What's happening in Ferguson? And let me finish. Let me
finish.
Let me finish. The Justice Department issued a statement. All right. That statement is not going anywhere. What's going to change Ferguson is what they're doing now in trying to get African Americans registered to vote and to go vote so that they can elect the people who make the decisions in Ferguson.
That's it.
So,
I agree with that part.
Okay.
That's it. Even though you keep making that statement, and I agree with that, I'm wholehearted about the voting side. But when it's not voting season, what do we do?
it's always voting season.
Always.
I'm talking about election time.
It's all,
Okay, well, Mr. Dutton, let me just ask you this here. Since we're talking about the Justice Department, we just had a death in the Sheriff's Department, correct? Who's making the request for the U.S. Justice Department? That part we're not talking about.
Okay.
We'll we
There's
can talk
a-
after, yeah.
There's a lot that you can do. And I feel your anger, and I know the discussion probably needs to continue to be had regarding what you're saying and what he's saying. There's a lot we can do. We're looking for mentors for our inmates, and that has been very difficult for us to find. Men like you who want to see a change for other black men. And that's what we're looking for. We've gone to churches, we've gone to the community to say, we need some people who can come in and help, motivate, and encourage these men. That's something that you can do. That's work. That's work in the community. We need that right now. Then in November, go vote. And then December, come on back into jail. That's what we need.
That's right. I'm Catherine Griffin from Harris County Sheriff's Office. And Reggie, baby, I know how you feel. And I'll take it all the way back. I'll make this short. But I really can make stuff short. But I will take it all the way back. With this woman right here. This female right there. Was the one that escorted me out of the Harris County Jail and met me at that back gate. And she showed me, she didn't know me. She thought I was crazy. There's 500 road lizards on crack. But she saw something in me. She took her time and she showed me care, love, and concern.
There you go.
At that back gate, it was that woman right there. Don't nobody ever mention her. That's Ramey.
Yeah.
I had on an old pimp, $5 fake fur coat and a hat, didn't I? A wife beater and a skirt that I bought from the lady out there off Liberty Road. We called her Mama Dresser Hoe. I'm serious. That's what I had on, and some run-over pumps. And she didn't care how I looked. She took me. She told me what my journey could be. I had to follow some simple rules. It wasn't going to be easy. Many people took a great chance on a crackhead prostitute that was considered a throwaway. But she did not. And to this very day, she hadn't said, everybody take credit for, ooh, she went through the drug court. Ooh, but what counted more than any of that was that woman right there at that back gate for me. You all need to be at the back gate. Now let's talk about your thing, Reggie, with the money. I talk a lot. I'm walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
But I have learned how to tame what I say and how I say it. I feel your frustration. I work for Peter Brown. People don't know that. He let me come into City Hall for 2 years. You remember that? I wasn't paid nary a dime, but I showed up every day like I was on, ain't that right, Mama? Like I was on the payroll. I taught myself how not to steal a paper clip, a pad, an ink pen. I taught myself how to ask, can I have this? And I was learning that because the program this woman escorted me to was teaching me. They had to take me back to infancy. No matter if I had come, I went to Texas Southern University because of Earl Hutnall. I'm telling you, that's how I got here. But I didn't none of that count when all that crack had got in there and dry cleaned and brainwashed my intelligence. It made me crazy and ignorant and hurt and sorry and guilty. And then people notice, wow, she don't miss a day. Oh, well, Betty didn't come to work today. Well, Betty ain't been here in 2 weeks. Let's get his job to her because she knows it now. Then it wasn't a whole bunch, but you'd be amazed at when you learn how to manage what you make. And then from there, Adrian Garcia was a council member. And he would bring me people out of his district who was prostitutes and dope fiends. And everybody he ever brought to me never went back into the life. So then he remembered and he took a chance and brought an ex-crackhead prostitute into the Harris County Jail, got creative, and this is what I want you to do at that juvenile department. You know how I get paid? Through commissary. Commissary is necessary in the jail. You can get paid through commissary, but you can't go holler at the people. You can't, because everybody, I know your passion. I know it. It's strong like mine. I know you can turn a hoe into a housewife. I'm one. Because HOE stand for helping others excel now, not just helping others. You feel me? Just like he said, it ain't what you say, it's how you say it, when you say it, where you say it, and why you say it. And you can get it. You can get it, Reggie. You won't have to be broke. And broke is temporary. You can't fight a wall. Pope.
Y'all,
That's right.
Yeah, we appreciate
I'm just
that.
saying.
We're going to get to
Try
these
it, Reggie.
last-
Okay.
To end up Kathy's story, her program just got funded, is what she was trying to tell you. Governor Rick Perry's office funded her program last summer.
Okay, we
My name is Georgia Provost. America has the largest incarceration in any country. Number 2, Dr. Douglas, education and economics is what we need to be talking about. Most of y'all are not as old as I am, but I'm a photographer, photojournalist, and a historian. About 20 years ago, the Chronicle ran 8 to 10 pages of black folks, young and Hispanics, that was incarcerated. You look at the grades, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So that in itself should have told the districts, you got over 21 school districts here. That should have told the school system what they needed to do. But they overlooked it because the school system is a business. Yeah. They're using our kids as a marketing tool for contracts. Number 2, it costs almost $133,900 to incarcerate somebody. That's a 4-year degree scholarship if you come to my university. Okay, you're talking about substance abuse. Dr. Douglas, it wasn't but one hospital in America that was saving the drug abuse. And it had to be because the NFL and the NBA was sending their people, their druggies, that was pro football and basketball, to Riverside General Hospital. So what has happened? They want to close Riverside because Riverside was in conflict. They want the drugs to keep on. And y'all look at dollar bill, this is what they say. G-O-D, God. Y'all think it's the God we serve? No. Guns, oil, and drugs. Think about it.
thank you. We got one more over here that we're over time, so we're going to go right here for the last
Try to
one.
make this quick. How you all doing tonight? This question actually for Ms. Clark, and then I have a comment as well. As far as the First Chance Intervention Program, when a person completes it, does it affect their voting rights? That's one question. And then, as things happen in the world, of course, and these marijuana laws come here to Texas, is there a plan to reduce the sentences of people that are already incarcerated? So that's my two questions. The comments, one directed at Ms. Herring. I totally agree that we need a mentoring program in the jail system, but that's far too late. What are we doing collectively as the units involved to get mentoring programs in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade in regards to keeping us on track, as well as addressing the taboo, especially in the black community, of the mental illness that our children bring to school, dealing with all the baggage that they have to deal with at home with the 15 million single-parent households ran by women. And we'll leave it at that so we can finish.
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Your first question about the voting rights. The First Chance program is aimed at preventing that person from having so the program is geared towards free effect. There are two agencies that are participating in the pilot program. So HPD and the Sheriff's Office. Three of those officers and county chiefs are at that program. And they are in possession of 2 ounces of west of marijuana. They do not arrest them. They give them the referral form to put them into the program to be assessed. No charges are ever filed with the program. Our district attorney has allowed that program to extend to some of the participants who had cases pending before the program started. So there are some people who had charges that were already pending and had charges that were already filed, and they were already kind of a part of the system that are in our program now. Since they come into the program, once they complete the program, their cases are dismissed and they're eligible for the immediate expulsion, so they will not affect their voting rights.
All right, great.
I'll comment on this last
Yeah,
part.
go for it.
I don't think it's too late to come into the jails because some of these men are the fathers of some of those 5th and 6th graders. So they do need mentors. And we do have a program. He was here, Mr. Morris Fountain. It's called Caring for Offender Families. And what he does is actually go into the schools to visit the children of the incarcerated men. So we are looking at, yeah, absolutely. And is he still here?
No, I think he...
Oh, he left. Okay. I would have connected you with him because, yeah, that's what he's doing. And he's doing it all on a voluntary basis. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're 15 minutes over, so I'm going to give our panelists a break and wrap it up. But if you have a question, how quick can you be? We're cutting you off after 15 seconds.
Quick.
Okay.
Quick. Thanks
got
to
it.
everyone, the Earl Carl Institute, Ms. Guidry, all your panelists, your volunteers. Thank you. Mr. Alex Bunnan, I think you took your first intern from me. I'm Dr. Kellum, Charlotte Kellum Gilbert. Thank you so much. He's very successful now. And Dr. Douglas, you know, I know you from church. Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer, I would like to get a couple of maybe reports that you have on the success of the reentry program, since you say you do a lot of evaluations, because that's a great thing that my grad students can do research on and help you even with the evaluations.
Thank you.
And I also want to know the information on how I can send you male volunteers for the jail system.
Wonderful. Right now, we have 30 volunteers. They're interns, and they come in from the Criminal Justice Department at the University of Houston downtown. They shadow our case managers as well as work with our HR and our legal departments. We don't turn down volunteers.
So I just contact you?
I will give you my card.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, great.
absolutely. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank our panelists first and foremost. Thank you for taking the time. I want to thank all of y'all for taking the time to come to the forum. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to talk afterwards, but thank you again for coming.
You too. Great work.